Leasing giant blames used EV values for multi-million pound loss. Well, Paul, do you know what you want? You want to shove that tool where the sun doesn't shine and get people who know the motor trade and who have spent their life in the motor trade and who predicted what would happen before it happened, who could have saved your company £500 million. The £500 million man. This is the 16th of July, 2 days ago. Lex Autolease, part of Lloyds Banking Group, has reported a £10.6 million loss in its annual accounts just 3 years after pre-tax profits hit more than £500 million. £500 million. That's a lot, isn't it? That's a lot of a turnaround. The vehicle leasing giant, ranked second in last year's Fleet News FM50, blamed the decrease in reported profit on a combination of factors. They included an increase on underlying depreciation charges on the funded fleet, lower profits on the disposal of vehicles, particularly electric vehicles, EVs, and an increased borrowing costs from interest rate rises. Now, you see, the thing is, they've been getting real good money on diesels and petrols. They've held up well. EVs have tanked. Now, I noticed further down here, electric vehicles accounted for 45% of new orders it received last year, virtually the same year on year, 46%, and it expects this to grow as corporate customers take action to meet net zero emissions targets. Well, I'm afraid, Lex, you've got your leasing prices wrong, and you don't want to grow your electric vehicles at the moment. You just don't want to. Otherwise, it's going to send you skin. The 10.6 million loss, which was set against a backdrop of revenues rising to 2.4 billion from 2.2 billion. So its revenue rose 0.2 billion. Last summer, it revealed pre-tax profits had plummeted by more than 400 million year on year to 124.4 million, a dramatic decline on the 544.2 million reported for 2022. Again, the fall in profits came despite Lex Autolease's revenue increasing over the same 12 months from 2 billion to 2.2 billion as new vehicle supply improved. Blame in part was levelled at lower profits on the disposal of vehicles due to market conditions, an increased interest expense on its borrowings. Its total risk fleet had fallen year on year to 278,000 plus vehicles from just over 281,000 in 2023, following a reduction in deliveries and informal extensions. Now, the informal extensions, those I'm assuming were they didn't want the electric vehicles back. They did everything. The leasing companies were doing everything to get customers to extend the contracts on electric vehicles because they didn't want to realise the loss on the books. If they could get more money, if they could leave it out on the roads with the customer longer, there was a chance that EVs might recover. Sadly, that was probably a bad decision because they actually dropped more. And I'd be interested to know how many vehicles they've still got out there on informal extensions, because that could bite them in the ass this year, because electric vehicles are still going down, and they're still going down at probably more than a monthly payment would cost you. So they're just delaying taking the pill. The overwhelming majority, 92% of the total funded fleet, is funded through operating leases, with the remaining 8% under finance leases, contract purchase agreements, and employee car ownership schemes, which is unchanged year on year. Meanwhile, the value of the total funded fleet grew by 6% after a rise of 14% in 2023, due to increases in the cost of new vehicles and customer interest switching to more expensive battery electric vehicles, BEVs, or hybrid systems, its market share of deliveries remains at 17%. So the price of its vehicles have gone up. So you can see where they're getting in trouble, can't you? The price of the vehicles have gone up and the amount they drop by has gone up more. And the worst thing is that petrols cost thousands of pounds less than an EV. But at 12 months old, with the same mileage on, same spec and everything, they're actually worth more than a used EV. So, and you know yourself, if you look, they are not charging. If they charge the correct amount of money for an EV lease, nobody would get one. You know, the only reason they get them is because of the benefit in kind. Electric vehicles accounted for 45% of new orders it received last year, virtually the same year on year, 46%, and it expects this to grow as corporate customers take action to meet zero emissions targets. Worryingly, however, it notes that rising levels in supply of used BEVs is likely to keep downward pressure on prices. Price pressure on used EVs. Lex Autolease is not alone in seeing profits plummet thanks to the volatility in used electric vehicle prices, with many leasing companies reporting a downturn in profits due to EV resale values. Now you'd think, you know, EVs are flying off the shelves, so why are they still going down? Earlier this year, Zenith reported used EV values had hit its overall adjusted earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation and amortisation, which was 33.8 million, down 28.4% year on year. What that 28.4%? Where have I had 28% before? In an effort to protect margins, 1 in 3 BEV contracts have been formally extended by Zenith as part of Project Volt. Now, that immediately makes me think, 1 in 3, that they've kind of got a third less customers, haven't they? They're not selling new product to a third of the customers. So the business has actually decreased because of electric vehicles. The group's lease extension program to address the decline in used plug-in prices. They've even got a name for it. Listen to this. 1 in 3 BEV contracts have been formally extended by Zenith as part of Project Volt. It's so bad, it's become a project, and they've got a special name for it. What they should have called it is like Project Hole in the Head. Project We're Going Out of Business if we keep leasing EVs to people. The group's lease extension program to address the decline in used plug-in prices. In its annual financial report, Lex Autolease says it anticipates a continued heightened propensity for customers to enter into informal extensions or request formal extensions to their current leases due to the increased cost of leasing a new vehicle compared to their current monthly rental payments. Right, okay. Now then, they've learnt the lesson. They've realised the last lease was too cheap. Okay? So now they're having to put it up so they won't lose money against it in the future, but the customers don't want to do it because they know very well that they can get a petrol vehicle cheaper because it doesn't lose as much. Come on, you evangelists, tell me about this. School me on this, will you? School me why this is happening. Why EVs are flying off the shelf. Why there's more new ones selling. Why used ones are selling. Why leasing companies are extending business and why people aren't getting another one on lease. This chap, I hope I can find it. He calls me all the names under the sun. When was the last time you worked a lease deal like this morning, mate? In fact, I was working one out when you were insulted me on YouTube this morning. I've got some other friends have got in touch with me today and they've got a Range Rover and they want a car for around town. EV, ideal. Don't want an EV. Do not want an EV. Here's me, Baz the EV hater. Oh, you want an EV? It'd be ideal for you. No, I don't want an EV. Or honestly, you do. You want an EV. Just do me a favour. If you get one, don't park it near your house. Don't charge it at night. But it'd be ideal for you. I don't want one. Okay. We watch this bloke on YouTube and he's calling them all the time. He looks a lot like you and he hates EVs. Project Volt, the group's lease extension programme to address the decline in used plug-in prices. In its annual financial report, Lex Autolease says it anticipates a continued heightened propensity for customers to enter into informal extensions or request formal extensions to their current leases due to the increased cost of leasing a new vehicle compared to their current monthly rental payments. Leases have gone up. The average used EV price has fallen 46% between 2021 and 2024, compared to 19% for cars with an internal combustion engine. You know, all you people like that chap the other day saying his VW ID3 had only dropped 50% in 4 years. It's not true actually, because ICE cars are dropping less than half and EVs cost more. According to the British Vehicle Rental and Leasing Association, BVRLA, its recently released annual Road to Zero report claimed that the UK EV future hangs in the balance, with used values falling relentlessly, costing the fleet and leasing sector hundreds of millions of pounds. Hundreds of millions. Question, did ICE cars cost them hundreds of millions of pounds? No, they made money. They made money. I worked for a company for a short while and they leased me a Ford Focus. Great car, little diesel, 60 miles to the gallon plus. Got everything in you could possibly want. Fantastic car. After about 2 months, they rang me up and said, do you want a new one? I said, well, you know, this is only 2 months old. You know, I've done like 2,000 miles in it. Well, we'll bring you a new one over. Why? Well, we're buying more and we stick them in the auction, we'll make a few quid. Diesel, falling relentlessly, costing the fleet and leasing sector hundreds of millions of pounds. And while welcoming the government's new electric car grant, the BVRLA has warned that without incentives to help stimulate the used market alongside new EV market, it could put further downward pressure on residual values, RVs. BVRLA CEO Toby Poston says stimulating new EV registrations without supporting the used market risks creating an even greater supply-demand imbalance, putting even more pressure on fast deflating second-hand values. The resulting losses will erode confidence and result in higher finance costs for new EVs, eliminating much of the benefit from the original grant, he added. Now, I haven't read that, and I've done a video which will actually probably come out after this one because it's quite a bit longer and will take me more time to edit, in which I say, in order to have a flourishing new sales program, you have to have a flourishing used sales program. If you can't sell the used ones, you just get constipated with used vehicles. All the dealers, all the funds are tied up, all the space is tied up, all the work's tied up, shifting them around all the time and not making any money. They can't turn the money over and they just die. In terms of emerging risks, Lex Autolease says that the growth in the EV market as customers transition from ICE vehicles poses a continuing risk of uncertainty for RV estimates it's assuming in its pricing. Forecasting. That's how you do it. For this chap who was telling me about me not knowing about leasing, you forecast. You know how much your car costs, you know how much profit you want, you know how much interest you want, and you forecast the difference between what you've paid for your vehicle, what it'll be worth when it comes back off lease, and you put all those costs together with your profit and then divide it by 36. That's how it's a simplified way of forecasting leases. He doesn't realise that. He doesn't realise that, you know, depreciation does actually come into leases, because if if one car drops more than another, like if you were to lease an EV and you were to lease a petrol car, you would be better off leasing the petrol car because it doesn't depreciate as much. It's cheaper to start off with. And funnily enough, I was just speaking to somebody today, and he says that they're putting 0% interest on PCPs on EVs because that's the only way they can counteract the depreciation on an EV. The money you save, 0%. It's not quite as much, but it's kind of an incentive to buy an EV on 0% rather than buy exactly the same model with a petrol engine at 7.9%. Basically, they're just forcing you into buying an EV, especially in the second-hand EV market, which remains relatively immature. It also warns that there remains uncertainty with the UK economy following financial challenges caused by the impacts of inflation, pressures and rising energy costs. This, it says, could adversely affect the performance of the company as small and medium-sized business profits are impacted. Speaking to Fleet News prior to the publication of Lex Autolease's annual accounts, Commercial Director Paul Hine, I'm assuming that's Hine and not Heine, said that the company had invested in new residual value forecasting. Now get this. Get this. Speaking to Fleet News prior to the publication of Lex Autolease's annual accounts, Commercial Director Paul Hine said that the company had invested in a new residual value forecasting tool, which has been built from scratch and provides predictions for vehicles from new to 15 years ago. It doesn't mean higher or lower RVs, it means a material improvement in accuracy. And it also enables us to react more quickly to any changes such as distress selling, added Heine. When we operate with 20 billion of residual value risk across the business, this tool will have a significant impact. Well, Paul, do you know what you want? You want to shove that tool where the sun doesn't shine and get people who know the motor trade and who have spent their life in the motor trade and who predicted what would happen before it happened, who could have saved your company £500 million. The £500 million man. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.